introduce our two special guests here tonight. We have with us, firstly, Zia Qureshi, Chief Executive Officer of Catalyst. Zia brings a wealth of experience as an Australian and global business leader, leading transformations of businesses, large and small, right through this region and around the world. He's worked with very eminent and large organisations, including Woolworths, Qantas, BHP, Origin Energy, and others. He's led as chairman the Australia-China electricity industry through a collaboration venture. He led a landmark project to develop China's sourcing strategy to secure supply of mineral resources, and he's been commended for his work by both Chinese and Australian political leaders. So, Zia, thank you for joining us. Arthur's career has spanned public service as Chief of Staff to John Howard, for Prime Minister Howard, for nearly a decade, I believe. Then in industry with Goldman Sachs and the National Australia Bank, and then in more recent times in politics, elected as a Senator for New South Wales in 2010, with his portfolio including Assistant Treasurer, Secretary of Cabinet, Minister for Industry, Innovation and Science, and now headed soon to Washington as Ambassador to the United States. Congratulations on your appointment, and thank you very much for joining us. Zia, I think now we'll open the thing over to you, Zia.
Zia's the entree. Thank you. Thank you, Kerry, for that kind introduction. Ladies and gentlemen, I'm delighted to present this important session jointly with the Honourable Senator SInodinos. Arthur is a great Australian who has made tremendously valuable contribution to Australia's development. However, it is the friendship with Arthur that I treasure most, which was formed over many years, during which I tried to add value to Australia's growth and development, while he was actually making it happen under John Howard's leadership. I take this opportunity to wish Arthur every success in new ambassadorial role in Washington, where he will play an integral part in Australia's further success based on his expertise, enthusiasm, passion, and above all, great wisdom. I would also like to take this opportunity on the outset to thank the Risk Discussion Group crew, Andrew Crawford, Kerry, Darren Chang, Alan Dong, and the whole team for the effort they make in terms of bringing such valuable sessions across to their membership and Australia generally. Ladies and gentlemen, what I'm going to do is to show a very brief video quickly, and then this video kind of sets the scene in terms of the points we are discussing, and thereafter I will then speak for a little while, and we will finally get the chance to get the main course.
In 1978, China was emerging from its Cultural Revolution as one of the world's poorest nations, with the economy in tatters. 88% of people were living in absolute poverty. China's economy was just 5% of the United States', and its GDP per capita was the equivalent of Zambia's. Fast forward 40 years, and China is unrecognisable. It's the world's second biggest economy, with GDP per capita up 50-fold. 700 million people have been lifted out of poverty, and its share of the global economy has gone from 1.8% in 1978 to 18.2% in 2017.
近代史上，我国落后挨打的根子之一，就是科技落后。
A new scientific and technical revolution is currently underway. China in vigorously promoting its overall development, has identified scientific and technological innovation as the main driving force.
There's a new highway in Pakistan, and a new rail terminal in Kazakhstan. But they're all part of one country's project that spans 3 continents and touches over 60% of the world's population. The multi-trillion-dollar Belt and Road Initiative, or BRI. They're also the 2 components of the plan. There's an overland economic belt of 6 corridors that serve as new routes to get goods in and out of China, like this railroad connecting China to London, and these gas pipelines from the Caspian Sea to China, and a high-speed train network in Southeast Asia. Then there's the Maritime Silk Road, a chain of seaports stretching from the South China Sea to Africa that also directs trade to and from China. The BRI also includes oil refineries, industrial parks, power plants, mines, and fiber optic networks, all designed to make it easier for the world to trade with China.
This week on Vice, the winners and the losers in Trump's trade war. President Trump campaigned on a promise to help American workers by renegotiating global trade deals.
We lose a fortune on trade. The United States loses with everybody. I don't mind trade wars when we're losing $58 billion a year. You want to know the truth. We're losing so much.
Then in March, he followed through on this rhetoric by slapping tariffs on imported steel and aluminum.
And now we're finally taking action to correct this long overdue problem.
It was the first step in what could develop into a global trade war.
Trump sending shockwaves through Washington and around the world.
As expected, China responded by initially slapping tariffs on $50 billion worth of American products. Trump administration announced tariffs on another $200 billion worth of Chinese products.
中方绝不会坐视合法权益受到损害，必将采取所有必要措施。
But it wasn't just China that Trump targeted. To the surprise of even his own supporters in Congress, the White House announced potential tariffs on America's closest allies.
The European Union is brutal to the United States.
The economy is healthy. Unemployment is at its lowest level since 1969.
He basically threatens. We are such a big economy. We're the bully. We're the bully. Okay, we're the big economy. You guys need us. It's easy for us to win trade wars because we're us.
Just stick with us. Don't believe the crap you see from these people, the fake news.
打贸易战的结果只能是两败俱伤。
Well, this is very interesting, and then the talk of the trade war. The thing is that nobody actually wins in this trade war, and then practically, I will talk about this a bit later. It's actually impossible to have this trade war. But what is clear from this video is the miracle that China has achieved in terms of its economic and social development in an unimaginable short time. The momentum continues after getting the state-of-the-art manufacturing capacity and infrastructure in place. The focus has now expanded, not shifted, but in fact expanded incrementally towards high-value areas. Science and technology innovation, investing in resource wealth across the globe, and global expansion through Belt and Road Initiative. You don't have to be rocket scientists to work out where China will be in the next 10 or 20 years. President Xi Jinping has proven to be an amazing leader for China. He has brought the focus of China's efforts on technology, curtailed corruption, and made bilateral deals with many countries, about 60 or 70 countries in his time since he's taken over. He laid out a clear set of goals and objectives for China, along with a clear time frame for achievement of these goals. What are these goals and objectives? That sort of gives you insight in terms of where China is heading over the next couple of decades. Firstly, the first major objective was or is dominant player in major markets in the following areas: driverless cars, robotics, artificial intelligence, quantum computing. By 2025, innovation leader across all advanced technologies, 2035. Number one in everything, including armed forces, 2039. I don't really kind of believe the armed forces bit and number one in everything. But if you look at other objectives and you visit some of the Chinese cities like Shenzhen, that actually all is happening now. So this is not some fantasy level stuff. They're putting the same amount of effort which they expanded to build their infrastructure now in technology and scientific areas. And that's going to lead to, or has already led to, this kind of huge development in technology and the use of technology in China. If you look back 15 years ago, you know, when I was going there very frequently at that time, almost a few times a month, there was no fast trains. Now they've got the biggest infrastructure of fast trains in the world. It's just the speed is absolutely enormous. All this is creating a huge dilemma for US, which is the number one superpower in the world. And that's what worries a lot of people. There is no doubt that USA is still the number one superpower, a highly clever and advanced country in many ways with significant leading edge and influence in the global world. So US is not about to lose its strength or position. So a lot of people see this fast growth of China. In fact, that in itself, in my mind, actually has the potential to fuel the growth of US simultaneously. But for a long time, I've been saying that US needed to realign its economic, business, and trade strategies to regain its global position that it lost by giving away its manufacturing to mainly China, giving its IT innovation to Indians, and all of the value-creating activities to everyone else, and basically focusing on the global policing role and so on. Finally, the American people realized that they were going backwards. Donald Trump, against all odds, were elected, and from the very outset, he basically said that, you know, he was going to bring the value-adding activities back on the US soil and improve trade and so on, so that the wealth creation activities could actually start. Trump is a very shrewd businessman and a considerable expertise in deal making. This is evident from the turnaround US economy has already faced. You know, I think unemployment, as I think the video might have mentioned as well, is down to the 1969 level. So that is a huge achievement without a lot of structural changes yet to happen. You know, the things that he's talking about, companies coming back and all that, that hasn't quite happened yet. The trade war hasn't produced any results per se, but he still managed to get all these things going. And that's all, I believe, is deal-making tactics and expertise that he actually has. He's gone to all his trading partners and said, look, you know, we do so much for you, or you rely on us, but what about doing some business where US can make money? And you know, the trading partners right across the Middle East, even with Australia, with some deals and stuff, and investment on defense areas has worked very well for US today. So you can't really basically take Trump's rhetoric and showmanship seriously. And this is what creates this kind of big war image when I don't believe there's any underlying element of or risk of war as such. Could he achieve the same sort of results without this rhetoric and so on? He probably could. But this, I believe, and Arthur would know better from politics point of view, this actually works wonders for him in terms of his own supporters, his own public and voters who supported up the tough American guy, John Wayne kind of guy. America is number one, and we'll sort the rest of the world out. So that's just the rhetoric that he uses smartly to bring people on the table and then negotiate reasonable deals. China, there's a huge imbalance between China and USA, and there's nothing wrong with that because of the nature of these trades. You know, some countries have an imbalance with one and not the other way around with another country. But basically what actually happens is that there is potentially recognized, I think, from just top of my mind, I think China exports to US is something like over 500 billion. In return, US exports to China about 120 billion or so. So there is potential, and Chinese are very open to these bilateral agreements. So rather than the trade war, you sit down with the Chinese and say, look, let's talk about what you could actually buy more from us, what we could do more, and the problem will be solved. And I think in the end, that's what his tactical play really is. So in all this scenario, then what are the major risks and opportunities? You know, let me just focus on the risks quickly. The first and the biggest risk people are talking about over the years in media that, you know, in history, if you look, there's one superpower taking over from another existing superpower. That's already, I think they talk about 12 out of 16 such events have led to big wars and so on. But I don't think that's a risk at all, because these days the superpowers has capacity to basically, you know, level one another within few minutes. And anybody starting such a war would be committing a suicide, more or less. And there's really no reason for that war, because prosperity in America will continue for a long time. China will lift people out of the poverty, and U.S. strength really is measured by the real true strength of a country is, you know, per capita GDP. For U.S., for example, is around close to 70,000 a year. China is under 20, about 16. So China's got a long way to go before US, and US is not going to stand still, you know, and both countries, despite China's massive trade and talk, both countries are equal in export levels, 2.5 trillion US, and China is the same. And I think European bloc is the same. So that's, I think, like we are fine. However, looking from Australian perspective, I think, well, what are the main risks for Australia? I think Australia's relationship with China is very critical. And if that goes sour or deteriorates, China would react. This could have implications for trade, particularly exports in the following key areas in medium to short term. We could, you know, face problems in agriculture, education, travel, tourism. Longer term, this also can impact our mineral exports, coal, LNG, and iron ore. And Chinese are, you know, very different culturally from us. So they can make these decisions centrally, unilaterally, without having big regard to or what will happen to them. They will go and find alternative, you know, suppliers, because now they know that everybody is running after them. You know, I think one of the Chinese leaders was telling me that, you know, this is the time now that everyone wants to be our friend, and we can't really be everybody's friend, so we have to be very selective and so on. And in this particular case, if this were to happen, you will find the USA, in terms of minerals, some of the minerals and areas would move very fast to capture our market share. UK will, you know, focus on education, and African countries in mineral resources and so on, and we could end up losing our market share. Secondly, Australia loses the highly sought out opportunity of being a close and trusted partner of the fastest growing superpower in the world. This has worked extremely well for us in the past, and this is something that is very important for Australia. So there's a bit of a risk of that if the relationship is not good. Australia industry and businesses lose out to opportunities to sell to a massive growth market. And of course, there's then possibility of reduction in FDI. China's FDI in Australia is not huge. It's about 11 billion a year. Since 2004 to now, I think it's been about 90 billion. But China has amazing capacity to invest 90 billion or 100 billion a year, should we want it. So it's a two-way thing. But I think there's a potential for that, which could be lost. But risk aside, I'm very excited about the opportunities we currently have in this globalized environment. The big opportunity is to position Australia for success by keeping both sides happy. And it's perfectly achievable. We have actually done this in John Howard's days extremely well, with Senator being first-hand party to that era, Australia, after all, is a mid-sized export-oriented economy, which makes us trade exposed. China accounts for 23.8% of our total trade, 30% of total exports today. Number two, Japan is a second from a very distant position of 9%, followed by USA as a third partner. For defense and security, we obviously rely on the US, and we do an excellent job in that area, and that relationship, I believe, will actually continue for us. So that, I think, is very good. We are well aligned with US in that sense. Over the years, particularly the John Howard era, as I said, Australia made great gains in strengthening relationship with China. An incredible amount of progress was achieved between 2002-3 to 2007. That is still reflected in the trade figures today of two countries. However, post-Howard era, we all know that Australian political system has gone through this continuous prime ministerial changes, etc., and the relationship often has been quite strained. We now have Scott Morrison, referred to as the most complete politician by none other than Senator SInodinos in his recent valedictory speech in Parliament, which I attended a couple of weeks ago. I think Scott Morrison has the wisdom to balance our relationship with both the superpowers and make it a win-win situation. However, he needs to rein in some of the ministers and other government officials for having an outburst publicly, which is, or making any allegations publicly, which is extremely dangerous in China, managing China's relationship. Given that China's culture is very different, they expect their business friends to respect their culture. And when I was doing some work for this government-to-government collaborations, etc., and the senior most government people, were often amazed with this lack of respect for their culture, and they just could not comprehend, why would Australia do something? And this was something little that we would just laugh about, And so I had to sort of go along. We said, we don't really mean this. This is just nothing, This is our culture. This is how, look what they say about John Howard. And they said, really? That person said this about your prime minister when he was laughing? I said, yeah, So then they sort of, so there's a bit of an educational side of cultural alignment. And I think one of the things I don't think have actually done well, despite there's such a huge, Chinese presence in this country, the cultural activities have not just taken place the way at a level that they should between the two countries, where the trading power of both is now so huge. So what are the opportunities, I guess, in terms of specific areas for Australia? Well, I talked about FDI. technology transfer back to Australia in terms of electrical cars, solar, robotics, manufacturing, drones, trade opportunities for the long run, expansion of services business, and infrastructure development, participation in Belt and Road Initiative that is worth 4 to 8 trillion. Finally, in wrapping up and looking into the crystal ball, what the future holds. Well, in my humble opinion, looking a few decades ahead, things will be fine. There'll be no trade wars or any other massive wars. Donald Trump, the so-called aggressor, will succeed in realigning the USA trade and business strategies, and that will enable USA to export more and do more business with China and the rest of the world. China will emerge as a global leader in implementing high technology. There are enough smart people in Australian politics and business who understand the importance of China relationship and potential, so our relationship could enter the next phase as a trusted partner and a great friend of China. The US alliance will continue to go through strength to strength as Australia is close to USA and good at keeping USA happy and engaged in many ways. Most importantly, we now have SInodinos in the front line of our relationship with the USA, so we are in safe hands. In wrapping up, ladies and gentlemen, wheeling time to tremendous opportunities in a globalized world that has serious risks and threats as well. This is a world where success and failure of countries will depend on the path they take and the strategies they adopt, who they partner with, and most importantly, how they embrace the game-changing technologies. No doubt, these are risky times, but I'm excited about the great opportunities Australia can harness to make a quantum leap forward in the globalized world. So, ladies and gentlemen, I say to Scott Morrison government and you all, what are we waiting for? Let's just do it. Thank you.